One accidentally spoken thought about her body nearly destroyed his career, but her unexpected response changed everything. Ryan had been working at the downtown marketing office for about 6 months when everything changed. It was one of those modern offices with glass walls, open spaces, and way too much coffee. He liked his job well enough. Designing advertisements and working with different clients kept things interesting. The pay was decent, his co-workers were friendly, and his boss wasn't a complete nightmare like at his previous job. The office had about 30 employees spread across different teams. Ryan worked in the design department, which was right in the middle of everything. His desk faced the main walkway, which meant he could see pretty much everyone coming and going throughout the day. Sometimes this was great for people watching during boring moments, but other times it was distracting when he was trying to focus on deadlines. That's when Ashley joined the creative team in September. She was hired as a senior graphic designer, and from day one, it was obvious she knew what she was doing. During her first team meeting, she presented ideas that were fresh and creative. She had this way of explaining complex design concepts that made everyone understand, even the people from accounting who usually looked confused during creative discussions. Ashley was probably in her late 20s, with shoulder-length, brown hair that she often tucked behind her ear when she was concentrating. She wore glasses that made her look smart and professional, which she definitely was. But what Ryan noticed most was how she treated everyone with genuine kindness. She remembered people's names immediately, asked about their weekends, and actually listened when they answered. Within her first week, Ashley had already helped solve a design problem that had been bothering the team for months. She stayed late to help a junior designer who was struggling with a difficult client project. She brought homemade cookies to share with everyone on Friday. It wasn't like she was trying to show off or win people over. She just seemed to be naturally thoughtful. Ryan found himself looking forward to seeing Ashley each morning. She usually arrived around 8:30, always carrying a large coffee cup in her laptop bag. She had this routine where she'd stop by different people's desks to say good morning before settling down at her workstation. When she got to Ryan's area, she'd always smile and ask how his current project was going. These conversations were brief, but somehow made his entire day better. He tried to tell himself it was just friendly workplace appreciation. After all, Ashley was clearly talented and brought positive energy to the office. Anyone would enjoy working with someone like that. But deep down, Ryan knew there was more to it. He was developing feelings that went beyond professional admiration. The problem was, Ryan had a strict personal rule about workplace relationships. His last job had turned into a disaster when he dated a coworker. Things got messy when they broke up, and eventually, he had to find a new job because the situation became too uncomfortable. He'd promised himself he wouldn't make that mistake again. So Ryan kept his interactions with Ashley purely professional. He was friendly, but not too friendly. He helped her with projects when she asked, but didn't go out of his way to create opportunities to work together. When the team went out for lunch or after work drinks, he made sure to sit away from her and focus on conversations with other colleagues. This strategy worked fine for the first few weeks. Ashley seemed to appreciate having a coworker who treated her with respect and didn't make things weird. They developed a comfortable working relationship. She'd ask for his opinion on design choices, and he'd give honest feedback. He'd run ideas past her when he was stuck on a project, and she always had helpful suggestions. But as autumn progressed and Ashley settled into the office routine, Ryan found it harder to ignore his growing attraction. It wasn't just that she was beautiful, though she definitely was. It was everything about her. Her laugh when someone told a funny story, the way she got excited about creative ideas, how she always made time to help others even when she was busy with her own deadlines. Ashley had a habit of walking around the office when she needed to think through design problems. She'd grab her coffee cup and take slow laps around the different departments, sometimes stopping to look out the big windows that faced the street. Ryan's desk was positioned perfectly to observe these thinking walks, and he found himself glancing up from his computer screen whenever she passed by. She usually wore professional outfits that were stylish but appropriate for the office environment. On this particular Tuesday morning in November, Ashley was wearing a navy blue dress that was perfectly suitable for work, but also happened to be very flattering. Ryan noticed this when she first arrived that morning, then immediately felt guilty for noticing and forced himself to focus on his computer screen. The morning was already stressful because Ryan was dealing with a particularly difficult client. This guy had been calling every day for a week, changing his mind about design elements and questioning every creative choice. Ryan had spent hours redoing work that was perfectly fine to begin with. The client seemed to enjoy being difficult, and Ryan was starting to lose his patience. When his phone rang around 10:30, Ryan saw the client's name on the caller ID and took a deep breath before answering. Sure enough, the man had more complaints and wanted to schedule yet another revision meeting. Ryan found himself gripping his pen tightly and staring at his computer screen, trying to remain polite while listening to unreasonable demands. As the conversation dragged on, Ryan noticed Ashley getting up from her desk for one of her thinking walks. She had her coffee cup in hand and was moving slowly around the office, clearly working through some creative problem. Without really thinking about it, Ryan's eyes followed her movement while he continued responding to the client's complaints, with phrases like, "I understand your concern," and "We can definitely make those changes." The client was still talking on the other end of the phone, going on and on about font sizes and color choices that he'd already approved 3 times before. Ryan was barely listening at this point, giving automatic responses while his mind wandered. He watched Ashley move gracefully around the office, stopping occasionally to examine something on a colleague's computer screen or to water one of the plants by the window. "So we need to make sure the logo is more prominent," the client was saying for what felt like the 100th time. "And I'm still not happy with the background color. Can we try something more blue but not too blue? You know what I mean?" Ryan rolled his eyes and muttered, "Sure, we can try that," while continuing to watch Ashley. She had paused near the break room, checking her phone and tucking that strand of hair behind her ear again. The morning sunlight from the big windows was hitting her just right, and Ryan found himself thinking how naturally beautiful she looked even in the fluorescent office lighting. "And another thing," the client continued, "I want to make sure we're targeting the right demographic. This needs to appeal to young professionals, but also families, but not too family-oriented, because we don't want to exclude single people." Ashley started walking back toward her desk, passing right by Ryan's workstation. She was moving slowly, still lost in thought about whatever project she was working on. Ryan watched her approach, his mind completely disconnected from the client's voice droning in his ear. She looked confident and professional, but there was something else. Maybe it was the way the dress fit her, or just the natural way she carried herself. Without thinking, without any filter between his brain and his mouth, Ryan spoke his thoughts out loud. "Wow, she really has a perfect..." The words were out before his brain could stop them. Ryan's eyes went wide as he realized what was happening. First, he noticed that Ashley had stopped walking and was now standing directly next to his desk, her eyebrows raised in surprise. Second, he could hear the client had gone quiet on the phone, clearly having heard every word. "Excuse me?" came the client's voice through the phone speaker. "What did you just say?" Ryan's face went from normal to bright red in about 2 seconds. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to speak, but no words came out. Ashley was standing there with her arms crossed, looking at him with an expression he couldn't read. Was she angry? Shocked? Disappointed? All of the above? Sorry, Mr. Johnson," Ryan stammered into the phone. There was a distraction here at the office. Can I call you back in a few minutes?" "A distraction?" the client repeated. "It sounded like you were making inappropriate comments about someone. Is this how your company conducts business?" Ryan wanted to disappear. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. He wanted to go back in time 5 minutes and pay attention to his phone call instead of letting his mind wander. But none of those things were possible. He was stuck in this nightmare moment with Ashley staring at him and his client questioning his professionalism. "No, sir, it's not like that," Ryan tried to explain, but his voice cracked. It was a mistake. Can we please continue our conversation about the logo design?" "I think I need to speak with your manager about this," Mr. Johnson said coldly. "This is completely unprofessional behavior. I'll be calling back later." The line went dead. Ryan slowly put down his phone and looked up at Ashley, who was still standing there. Other people in the office were starting to notice that something was happening. Jessica from accounting was looking over from her desk. Tom from the marketing team had stopped his conversation and was glancing in their direction. Ashley, Ryan started, but the words got stuck in his throat. How do you explain something like this? How do you apologize for saying something so inappropriate, even if it was an accident? Ashley's expression was unreadable. She wasn't yelling, which was probably a good sign. She wasn't storming off to report him to human resources, which was also good. But she wasn't saying anything either, and the silence was killing him. I didn't mean for you to hear that, Ryan finally managed to say, which immediately sounded stupid even to his own ears. I didn't mean to say it at all. I was distracted and I wasn't thinking, and he was rambling now, making it worse, with every word. Ashley shifted her weight from one foot to the other, still watching him with those intelligent eyes behind her glasses. Ryan could feel sweat forming on his forehead, despite the air conditioning. Look, I know how that sounded, he continued desperately. But you have to understand, I respect you as a colleague and as a person. I would never intentionally say something like that. My brain just malfunctioned or something. More people were definitely watching now. Ryan could see Linda from HR walking across the office, though she didn't seem to be heading their way yet. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. Ashley finally spoke, but her voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse than if she had been yelling. Ryan, she said, and hearing his name made his stomach drop even further. We need to talk about this, but not here, not with everyone watching. She glanced around the office, noticing the same curious stares that Ryan was trying to ignore. Are you free for lunch today? She asked. There's a cafe down the street. We can discuss this properly there. Ryan nodded quickly, grateful that she was willing to have a conversation instead of just reporting him immediately. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you want to do. Ashley picked up her coffee cup from his desk, where she'd apparently set it down, when she stopped to listen to his phone call. 12:30, she said simply. And Ryan? You might want to call your client back and do some damage control before this gets back to management. With that, she walked away, leaving Ryan sitting at his desk feeling like his world had just collapsed around him. The rest of the morning felt like the longest 4 hours of Ryan's life. After Ashley walked away from his desk, he sat there staring at his computer screen, trying to process what had just happened. His hands were shaking slightly as he picked up his phone to call Mr. Johnson back, though he had no idea what he was going to say to fix this disaster. The client answered on the first ring, and his voice was ice cold. I hope you have a very good explanation for what happened earlier. Ryan took a deep breath. Mr. Johnson, I want to sincerely apologize for my unprofessional behavior. There's no excuse for what happened. I was completely out of line, and I understand your frustration. Frustrated doesn't begin to cover it, the client replied. I'm paying your company good money for professional service, and instead I get to listen to inappropriate comments about your female coworkers. This is the kind of behavior that creates hostile work environments. You're absolutely right, sir, Ryan said, meaning every word. It was inappropriate and it won't happen again. I'd like to make this right if you'll give me the chance. There was a long pause. Finally, Mr. Johnson spoke again. I want to speak with your supervisor, and I want a different designer assigned to my project. I don't feel comfortable working with you after this. Ryan's heart sank, but he couldn't argue. I understand completely. I'll have my manager call you this afternoon to discuss reassigning your project. After hanging up, Ryan immediately went to find his boss, Dave, to explain the situation before the client called. Dave listened with a serious expression, occasionally shaking his head. Ryan, you know I like you, but this is serious, Dave said when Ryan finished explaining. We could lose this client over something like this. And if Ashley decides to file a complaint... I know, Ryan interrupted. I messed up badly. Ashley wants to talk about it at lunch. Hopefully we can work something out. Dave looked skeptical. Just be careful what you say. Don't make this worse than it already is. The morning dragged on painfully. Ryan tried to focus on other projects, but he kept replaying the incident in his mind. Every time he looked up, he could see Ashley at her desk working normally as if nothing had happened. How was she so calm? If someone had made a comment like that about him, he'd probably be furious. Around 11:30, Jessica from accounting stopped by his desk. "Hey, is everything okay? I saw you and Ashley having some kind of intense conversation earlier." "Just a misunderstanding," Ryan said quickly. "Nothing major." But Jessica didn't look convinced. "Well, if you need to talk about anything work-related, you know where to find me." Ryan appreciated the concern, but he definitely didn't want word spreading around the office about what had happened. The fewer people who knew the details, the better. At exactly 12:30, Ryan grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator. Ashley was already waiting there, checking her phone. She looked up when she saw him approaching. "Ready?" she asked simply. They rode the elevator down in silence. Ryan's mind was racing with possible conversations they might have. Maybe she was going to tell him she was reporting him to HR. Maybe she was going to demand he request a transfer to a different department. Maybe she was going to quit because of him. The cafe Ashley had chosen was small and quiet, with little tables scattered around and soft music playing in the background. They ordered their food. Ryan got a sandwich he probably wouldn't be able to eat, and Ashley got a salad, and found a corner table away from other customers. For a few minutes, they sat in awkward silence. Ryan kept opening his mouth to start apologizing again, but Ashley held up her hand. "Before you start explaining yourself," she said, "I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." Ryan nodded nervously. "Do you often think about female co-workers that way? Because if this is a pattern of behavior, then we have a much bigger problem to discuss." "No," Ryan said immediately. "Absolutely not. I've never said anything like that before, and I've never made anyone uncomfortable at work. At least I really hope I haven't." Ashley studied his face carefully. "What about thinking it, even if you don't say it out loud?" Ryan felt his cheeks getting red again. Look, I'd be lying if I said I never notice when someone is attractive, but I don't spend my time thinking inappropriate thoughts about coworkers. That's not who I am." "But you were thinking about me specifically when you made that comment." It wasn't really a question, and Ryan knew there was no point in denying it. "Yes, and I'm ashamed of that. You deserve to work in an environment where you're respected for your talents and intelligence, not where some guy is making comments about your appearance." Ashley nodded slowly. "Okay, next question. Have you been interested in me romantically?" Ryan almost choked on his water. "What?" "It's a straightforward question, Ryan. I'm trying to understand what's really going on here." Ryan looked down at his sandwich, unsure how to answer. Being honest might make things worse, but lying definitely wouldn't help. "Yes," he said quietly. "I've been attracted to you since you started working with us, but I've tried really hard to keep things professional because I don't believe in workplace relationships. They're complicated and they usually don't end well. So you've been suppressing feelings for me, and this morning they just slipped out accidentally. I guess you could put it that way, though that makes it sound like I've been obsessing over you or something, which I haven't been. I think you're amazing, and not just physically. You're smart and kind and talented, and I enjoy working with you." Ashley was quiet for a long moment, stirring her salad with her fork. Ryan waited nervously for her response, preparing himself for the worst. Finally, she looked up at him with an expression he couldn't read. "You know what's funny about this whole situation?" she said. Ryan shook his head, not trusting his voice. "I've actually been wondering if you were interested in me too, but you've been so professional and distant that I convinced myself I was imagining things." Ryan's mouth fell open. This was definitely not the direction he had expected this conversation to go. Ryan stared at Ashley across the small cafe table, trying to process what she had just said. His brain felt like it had short-circuited. Had she really just admitted that she'd been wondering if he was interested in her? After the morning had this felt like some kind of alternate reality. Wait, what? He managed to say, setting down his water glass with shaky hands. Ashley smiled for the first time since the whole incident happened. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. I said I've been wondering if you liked me too. You're not very good at hiding it, Ryan. But I thought I was being completely professional, he said, confused. I've been trying so hard not to make things weird between us. That's exactly what tipped me off, Ashley laughed softly. Most guys in the office are friendly and relaxed. With me. You always seemed nervous, like you were being extra careful about everything you said and did. At first I thought maybe you didn't like me as a person, but then I started noticing other things. Like what? Ryan asked, genuinely curious now. Like how you always glance up when I walk by your desk, or how you remember every little detail about projects I mention, or how you get this specific look on your face when you're trying not to. Stare at me during meetings. Ryan's face turned red again. I really thought I was being subtle. You were trying to be, which was actually kind of sweet. Most guys who are interested in me at work are pretty obvious about it. They find excuses to hang around my desk, or they try to impress me by taking credit for ideas, or they make jokes that are just a little too flirty. You did the opposite. You went out of your way to treat me exactly like you'd treat anyone else. Because that's what I thought you'd want, Ryan said. I know how uncomfortable it can be when coworkers make things weird. I didn't want to be that guy. Ashley nodded approvingly. And that's exactly why I'm not storming off to HR right now. Your comment this morning was inappropriate, yes, but I can tell it wasn't intentional. You've spent months being respectful and professional with me. One accidental slip doesn't erase all of that. Ryan felt a huge wave of relief wash over him. So you're not going to report me? I'm not planning to, no. But we do need to figure out how to handle this situation going forward. Because now, everything's out in the open, isn't it? Ryan picked at his sandwich, thinking about what she was saying. She was right. There was no going back to pretending they were just normal coworkers now. They'd both admitted there were feelings involved. Can I ask you something? He said after a moment. Sure. When you said you were wondering if I was interested, does that mean you're interested too? Ashley took a sip of her iced tea, considering her answer. I think you're a good guy, Ryan. You're talented, you're funny when you let your guard down, and you treat people with kindness. When I first started at the company, you were one of the few people who helped me without making it seem like I owed you something in return. That's not really an answer to my question, Ryan pointed out gently. You're right, it's not. Ashley smiled again. Yes, I've been attracted to you too, but like you, I have concerns about workplace relationships. They can get complicated quickly. Ryan nodded. My last job ended badly, partly because of that. I dated someone in accounting, and when we broke up, it made everything awkward. I eventually had to find a new job. Exactly. That's why I've been trying to ignore my feelings and just focus on work. But after this morning, she trailed off, looking thoughtful. After this morning, everything's different, Ryan finished. Right. So the question is, what do we do now? They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both thinking through the possibilities. The cafe was getting busier with the lunch crowd, but their corner table still felt private and quiet. What if we tried being honest with each other? Ryan suggested. Not about everything all at once, but about this situation. We could take things slowly, see how it goes, and be really careful about keeping work and personal life separate. That sounds reasonable in theory, Ashley said. But how would it work in practice? We'd have to see each other every day, work on projects together, attend the same meetings. How do we handle the fact that we're attracted to each other while still being professional? I don't know, Ryan admitted. But I think trying to pretend nothing happened would be even harder at this point. At least if we're honest about it, we can talk through any problems that come up. Ashley seemed to be considering this carefully. There would have to be rules, strict boundaries about how we behave at work. Absolutely. No flirting in the office, no special treatment on projects, no one else knowing about our personal relationship until we figure out where it's going. And if it doesn't work out, we have to promise to handle the breakup maturely. No drama, No making other people choose sides. No letting it affect our work quality. Ryan nodded seriously. I can agree to that. Can you? I think so, but I want to be really clear about something first. Ashley leaned forward slightly. This morning's incident can never happen again. I don't care if you're on a call with the most annoying client in the world. You can't let your guard down like that. Never again, Ryan promised. I was mortified. The moment I realized what I'd said, the last thing I ever want to do is make you feel uncomfortable or disrespected at work. Good. And one more thing. We need to figure out how to handle the client situation. Mr. Johnson is probably going to complain to management. Ryan's stomach dropped as he remembered the phone call. He already demanded a new designer. Dave is going to call him this afternoon. Okay, so we need to make sure this doesn't blow up into a bigger problem. Can you handle the conversation with Dave without mentioning my name specifically? I already talked to him briefly. I just said I made an inappropriate comment during a client call and that you and I were going to discuss it. I didn't give him details. That's good, let's keep it that way for now. Ashley finished her salad and checked her watch. We should probably get back to the office soon. People will start wondering where we went. Before we go, Ryan said, I just want to say thank you. For not immediately assuming the worst about me, for being willing to have this conversation, for giving me a chance to explain. A lot of people wouldn't have been so understanding. Well, don't make me regret it, Ashley said with a smile that was both warm and slightly warning. As they walked back to the office building, Ryan felt like the whole world had shifted. This morning he'd been sure his career was over and that he'd ruined any chance of a relationship with Ashley. Now, somehow, they were planning to explore those feelings carefully and honestly. It wasn't the way he'd ever imagined this conversation happening. But maybe sometimes the best things came from the most unexpected moments. Walking back into the office after lunch felt surreal for Ryan. Just a few hours ago, he'd been sitting at his desk thinking his world was falling apart. Now he was walking beside Ashley, both of them trying to act normal while processing everything they'd just discussed. The strangest part was how natural it felt to finally be honest with each other. Dave was waiting at Ryan's desk when they got back, looking serious. Ryan, I need to talk to you in my office. Ashley squeezed Ryan's shoulder, briefly, so quickly that anyone watching would think it was just a friendly gesture, before heading to her own desk. Ryan followed Dave down the hall, his stomach knotting up again. Mr. Johnson called, Dave said as soon as they were behind closed doors. He's still upset, but he's willing to stay with the company if we reassign his project and you write a formal apology letter. Ryan nodded quickly. Of course. I'll write the letter this afternoon. He also wants assurance that this kind of behavior won't happen again. I told him you're normally very professional and that this was completely out of character for you. It was, Ryan said earnestly. I've never done anything like this before and I never will again. Dave studied Ryan's face for a moment. What exactly happened? You were pretty vague earlier. Ryan had prepared for this question during lunch. I made an inappropriate personal comment during the call. It wasn't directed at Mr. Johnson, but he heard it and rightfully felt it was unprofessional. I take full responsibility. And Ashley? How does she fit into this? She happened to be nearby when it happened. We discussed it and worked things out. She's not filing any complaints. Dave looked relieved. Good. Because losing a client is bad enough. Having an HR situation on top of it would be much worse. He paused. Ryan, you're a good employee. Your work is excellent and you get along well with everyone. But you can't have any more incidents like this. Understood? Completely understood. The rest of the afternoon passed quietly. Ryan wrote a sincere apology letter to Mr. Johnson and helped transition the project files to another designer. Ashley worked at her desk normally, occasionally catching his eye across the office with small, reassuring smiles. To everyone else, they probably looked like two co-workers who'd resolved a minor disagreement. Over the next few weeks, Ryan and Ashley began what they privately called their careful experiment. They kept their interactions at work completely professional, but started having coffee together before work started and occasional lunches away from the office. These conversations revealed how much they actually had in common beyond their mutual attraction. Ashley told him about growing up in a small town and how she'd always dreamed of working in a creative field. She'd moved to the city 3 years ago, leaving behind a serious relationship that couldn't survive the distance. She was close to her family but independent, funny but thoughtful, ambitious but not ruthless. Ryan shared his own story, how he'd stumbled into design almost by accident after studying business in college. He talked about his disastrous previous job and why he was so cautious about office relationships. He told her about his hobbies, his goals, his fears about not being creative enough to succeed long term. What surprised them both was how easy it was to talk to each other once they stopped pretending they were just colleagues. They had similar senses of humor, shared interests in movies and books, and complementary perspectives on work and life. After about a month of these careful coffee dates and lunch conversations, they had their first real date outside of work. Ryan picked a restaurant across town where they wouldn't run into anyone from the office. Ashley wore a casual dress that was completely different from her professional wardrobe, and Ryan barely recognized her at first. She looked more relaxed, more herself. "This is weird, isn't it?" Ashley said as they sat down at their table. "Good weird or bad weird?" Ryan asked. "Good weird. It's like seeing a different side of you. At work you're so focused and serious. Here you seem more relaxed. I could say the same about you. You're beautiful at work, but here you're—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Careful," Ashley warned with a smile. "Remember what happened the last time you tried to compliment my appearance?" Ryan laughed, and the tension broke completely. They spent the evening talking and laughing like they'd been dating for months instead of having their first official date. As weeks turned into months, their relationship developed slowly and carefully. They were scrupulous about maintaining professionalism at work. No one in the office suspected anything was happening between them. They took on projects together when it made sense professionally, but never showed any favoritism or special treatment toward each other. The real test came when they had their first disagreement about a work project. Ashley thought Ryan's design approach was too conservative, while Ryan felt her ideas were too risky for the client. They debated it professionally in a team meeting, each presenting their case without any personal tension bleeding through. Later, over dinner at Ryan's apartment, they talked through the disagreement more openly. "I was worried we'd start fighting at work if we disagreed about something," Ashley admitted. "Me too. But it felt pretty normal, didn't it? Like we were just two professionals with different opinions." "Exactly. I think we might actually be good at this whole keeping work and personal separate thing." 6 months after the infamous phone call incident, Ryan and Ashley were solidly together. They'd navigated the tricky early stages of an office relationship and found a balance that worked for both of them. Ryan had never been happier, and Ashley seemed genuinely content with how things had developed. They still hadn't told anyone at work about their relationship, but they were starting to think about going public. A few co-workers had made comments about how well they worked together, and Ryan suspected Jessica from accounting might have figured something out based on her knowing looks. "You know what's crazy?" Ashley said one evening as they walked through the park near Ryan's apartment. "What?" "If you hadn't made that completely embarrassing comment during your phone call, we might never have gotten together. I was too nervous to say anything, and you were too determined to keep things professional." Ryan shook his head in amazement. "I still can't believe you didn't report me to HR immediately. Any other person would have. Well, any other person might not have been secretly hoping you'd notice them too. So you're saying my complete humiliation was actually the best thing that could have happened?" "I'm saying sometimes the most embarrassing moments lead to the most unexpected good things, though I definitely don't recommend your approach to anyone else." Ryan stopped walking and turned to face her. "For the record, I want you to know that I see so much more in you than what caused that stupid comment. You're brilliant and kind and funny and creative, and I fall for your mind and your heart every single day." Ashley smiled and reached up to kiss him. "That's much better than your first attempt at complimenting me." As they continued their walk, Ryan reflected on how dramatically his life had changed because of one mortifying moment. He'd learned that Sometimes the worst mistakes could lead to the best outcomes. That honesty was worth the risk, and that the right person would see past your flaws to the intention underneath. Most importantly, he'd learned that Ashley was even more amazing than he'd ever imagined, and that their accidental beginning had turned into something real and lasting. Who would have thought that the most embarrassing day of his career would also be the day that changed his life for the better?